Amazon. And with this now, we're coming to Europe and where it stands right now, because Europe stands at a pivotal moment, right? We've got centralized digital infrastructure, fragmented standards, and of course, these mean challenges. But of course, where there's a challenge, there's also an opportunity. The continent has an exciting opportunity to unlock the full promise of decentralization and lead the way to shaping a more open, resilient digital future. The question is, of course, how do we do that? And the moderator is going to dive deep into the topic, and he's no one else than the editor-at-large of TechCrunch. And he's going to be in conversation with the CEO of Cardano Foundation in Switzerland. So please welcome to the stage Mike Butcher and Frederick Gregor. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Have a seat.
Hi.
Hello. Mike Butcher and Frederick Gregor here. Mike Butcher, journalist based in London, at Mike Butcher on social media. Many of us would associate with Cardano as a crypto platform amongst many of the other crypto platforms. But what we're going to be discussing here today is not the crypto asset space, which has a world of its own, as we all know, but the underlying technology and the capability of blockchains to do things like verify information, etc. And I think the context of the conversation really is thinking about it in terms of infrastructure, especially public infrastructure, and for the public good. It's a conversation that has sort of slipped off the agenda to some extent. So I'm actually really delighted that you've managed to join us here today and expand on this. We keep talking about AI in Europe right now in terms of it's our competitive competition in the global race around AI. But there's also a whole conversation we could be having about this technology, which sometimes might be left behind and is worth looking at it. And I think we're going to unpack that relationship in a minute. But let's just talk a little bit first about what we're talking about. The sort of the opening line, shall we say, to the conversation. We wanted to unpack the idea that whether or not Europe could do more. The US has really gone in for crypto assets right now. It isn't actually talking about, interestingly, so much the underlying technology. Why do you think that is?
Well, the US has basically seen a decline in measurable GDP based on a lack of blockchain and crypto adoption. And what we've been able to prove, for instance, in Switzerland, where we created more than 10,000 jobs with over 1,000 companies by establishing a principle-based framework, you can measure economic growth by doing this. The other part of the equation is if you look at the global financial market infrastructure, a lot of the large players like JP Morgan, Bank of International Settlement, and so forth are now so far in their research and proof of concept that they realize that a global permissionless blockchain with non-asymmetric governance is the way forward if you want to build a new financial market where more can participate across regulatory spaces and nation states.
Well, what do you think blockchain could do, and Cardano in particular could do right now, that's not being done already?
Well, it's about what does enterprise-grade critical infrastructure actually look like. So if you're going to build a city with a sewage system and internet and public security, would you accept a city which is built on a weak foundation who collapses all the time and sinkholes emerges and people just die randomly? No, you wouldn't. You would need something which basically always is up, no matter what happens. We were under attack from a nation-state actor, and we survived without having to do weird patches or reset anything. Would you move to a city where there's no economic opportunities? No, you would not. We see today that cities die if there's no economic opportunities. Cardano has economic opportunities for all the world's citizens around the world. It doesn't matter where you're born or if you have an identity. It's not the key. Here you can have opportunities wherever you are without moving anywhere. You can be basically a citizen of Cardano, where we currently have around 8 million citizens with very strong digital identity, economic opportunities. We never go down, and now we even have, you know, the check marks that we are accepted as critical infrastructure to build nation states on.
But can you point to projects that European or especially EU member states have adopted with Cardano on some of the things you've been talking about?
No, so this is where the sad part comes in, right? So in Europe, there's been a big lack in terms of guidance and clarity for what is accepted by the European Parliament and what is accepted by nation states. And there's been sort of a little bit, I would say a little bit of a laggard in this because, you know, everything is pretty good, you know? There is no big problems, you know, we might be arguing a little bit. There was a Brexit, which, you know, was a Brexit. But overarching has been going really well. And what really changed now is the war in Ukraine and then the US. Those two combinations, and it's not so much the new administration, it goes back to something called the US Global Cloud Act. You know, a lot of, you know, companies in Europe are suddenly seeing themselves that they are lacking economic opportunities and they're not able to basically move across the border as they were before. And that means that suddenly there's a crack in the foundation. And when things hurt a little bit, you're willing to take a chance. On the other side of this, Cardano is now mature. We would not be able to play in this landscape a year ago. We could not go in and talk about what is our quantum security landscape looking like. We would not be able to talk about disaster recovery, SOC 2 audits, those kind of things. But we now have full features and we are DORA compliant.
What changed in that, in your product development to make you capable of that?
We deployed the last hard forks, so basically the last pieces of technology, which means you can basically run Visa or MasterCard on Cardano for close to zero cost, which means it was one of those things everybody was talking about. If you cannot run something big, why would you do it, right? And then we have sufficient use cases across Brazil, Argentina, Hong Kong, etc., that we can actually prove that this works, not just today, but also in 5 to 10 years.
Do you want to just briefly address the news story that happened this week or last couple of weeks regarding the hard fork and the wallets that were missing? Or
Sure. So Cardano has always been doing things a little bit differently. And Cardano actually never did an ICO. So we did a private placement, which most VCs and investors know about here. And we went above and beyond and actually KYC'd and AML'd everybody in 2015 and 2016, where all other projects was about short-term economic gain. We were about how do we think the future will evolve in 10 to 20 years' time. And as you can imagine, as a project like ours, which is now over from 16 basically, right? Over time, some people might have forgotten that they own some ADA, or they have forgotten that they have a voucher or a claim on some ADA. And what we've been trying to do is we're saying, isn't it possible to find them? Isn't it possible to ensure that they get to be citizens of what they believed in 2016? And what basically is happening right now is that we are encouraging to do a full audit based on that and put it on the blockchain.
There you go. Well, there's the answer. I guess the other issue I wanted to talk to you about is that the EU's digital product passport will soon be mandatory for physical goods sold in Europe under the Eco Design for Sustainable Products regulation. Do you see this as the window into which Cardano's platform could jump?
So if you go on YouTube and you find me in there, I'll probably say, blockchain will never get a ChatGPT moment. But I actually think this might be the European ChatGPT moment. Because when you look into the digital product passport regulation, it becomes extremely clear that you cannot do that on a centralized platform. And if you are a founder of a company, would you put money aside to when your company go bust because the products you produce last longer than your company? So basically there's a piece of regulation who now enables the adoption of blockchain in such a way that I do think that this is sort of equivalent to a European Union ChatGPT moment for blockchain.
Is this because running a centralized database of products and whatever it is in Europe would be just too unwieldy? I mean, we already have databases for barcodes, for for all sorts of, all sorts of things. What difference would it make running a decentralized database using blockchain?
I think for many things you should always ask who pays and who decides. So if you run a Amazon Web Service cloud-based database today and your business go bankrupt, who's going to pay for you to have that digital product passport, being prolonged every single year until the last of the products are recycled? And the answer to that is nobody. No nation state, or it would be like an association for welfare would do that, right? And that's the beauty of the blockchain. The blockchain, with the right economic incentives, maintains itself forever, right? And because the digital product passport becomes one out of thousands of products on Cardano, the community will basically lift that burden as it was a part of a digital public infrastructure without even asking.
I see, but you're not just the only player in the market. There are other blockchains out there. There are other parachains as well. How do you feel that you are able to compete for that kind of implementation?
The way we look at it is basically we don't want to compete with other blockchains. We want to enable other blockchains to be maximum successful, because a blockchain-enabled market is, all other things equal, much better than what we have today. So we already see today that the academic research we've done for hundreds of millions of dollars is being implemented in the leading blockchains, which is there right now, but also in the new blockchains who's coming. So some of the things we've done in terms of quantum security research is now being implemented. Some of our consensus algorithm is now in the top 10 blockchains available and viewable. But we are also, on the other hand, being inspired for what works with them. And that means that interoperability becomes much easier, and we basically want to have an interoperable market, not just with blockchains, but also with private databases. And I think this is how you get 1 billion people on a blockchain. It's not about how do you kill the rest, it's how do you actually get people to have real business value, and how can you measure that, and how can you move the needle together.
Okay, well, one of the other criticisms of the technology is that it's carbon footprint, and we've all become more and more aware that using generative AI requires a lot of energy. There's something like 8 liters of water for every ChatGPT query, apparently, and I think that was the last one I saw. It might be more, but so sustainability is a key issue here. So what's your answer to whether or not this is a sustainable platform?
So we have about, as I said, around 7 million inhabitants. We have close to 1,000 companies deploying and already launched on Cardano. And this whole network in terms of energy is about 15 to 20 American households yearly. So this is a drip in the water. It's not comparable. Actually, the European Union or the European Parliament came to me and said, "You're not sustainable." And I said, "What do you mean?" I just proved it to you. We're the only MiCA-compliant layer 1 out there with a full sustainability proof. And they said, you could be more sustainable if you would say you had only 10 stake pools. And I said, yeah, that's true. We could run Cardano with 10 stake pools, but who selects those 10 stake pools? And they say, well, you could. And we're like, yeah, then again, I will pick the winners. Why can't we let everybody join and everybody contribute if they want? So we are actually scoring slightly above the maximum sustainability, by still being the most decentralized blockchain out there.
Right, and it's a proof of stake platform, right?
It's a proof of stake, yeah.
Which is apparently more sustainable than proof of work, of course. What are the kind of key areas you think this is applicable in? I mean, there's obviously the digital passporting issue. Are there any other kinds of areas, like in fintech, which it might be applicable?
Actually, I want to start somewhere else. With the war raging in Europe, right, we saw defense is becoming a new really big thing. And one of the things Cardano is really good at is taking a physical item and anchoring that without no doubt in an immutable database, including the footprint and the identity. So I think defense is going to be, over time, a growing area. We already see now we are bidding on 7,000 bulletproof vests with a full identity package that nobody has interfered with the construction of the bulletproof vest. So when somebody goes to war, they actually know the thing works, right? And the other part which we see really is moving very fast is collaboration and security of agentic AIs. And you basically have two security models. One is you go to a global provider who has all the data and says, we are secure. And the other one is you do it in a distributed network fashion. And their collaboration and finding other agentic AIs who can identify and verify that they know what they're talking about, also from a privacy perspective and a regulation in the European Union perspective, is becoming one of the areas where we see massive growth, specifically also here in Germany.
But, I mean, just to push back on that in a second, if you have an agentic AI versus another agentic AI and they're interoperable or they're perhaps doing a transaction together, what purpose does it have to have yet another layer of verification, such as on a blockchain like Cardano?
It's because there's two belief stories, right? One is that the world would end with one global company who knows everything and services everybody. And the other belief story, which I think has been truly evolving, specifically in Europe, is that it's the small and medium-sized companies who drives the economy, who actually have the ability to contribute to the local communities and basically drive GDP. And these small and medium-sized companies, they need to be able to protect their data, but also be profitable on their data. And that's exactly where Cardano fits, compared to them basically forcing them to put them on a global centralized platform. So we are enabling medium-sized companies to be local in the community and create, a counterbalance to the other side of the equation.
It's interesting because I was looking up your previous history, and you came from the banking side of the fintech industry. What attracted you to go into this space where traditionally you would have been obviously a player in a more centralized economy and under banking, and now you're on the decentralized side of it? Why did you think, yes, this is for me?
So I'm originally from Denmark. We are a quite privileged country. I walked into my bank and I said I wanted to trade an oil future, and everybody started laughing. And then I wanted the general manager started laughing and said, you're not qualified. I said, what do you mean? I have enough money to carry the margin for one oil future. And they basically told me to go home, right? And I was like, how can it be that you don't have the same access as others to global capital markets? So my first mission and vision was really, how do we democratize the access to capital markets, not just for the people in Denmark, for everybody, because it turns out there's the people who has access and have privilege, and there's the people who don't. And when the Bitcoin and Bitcoin technology came around, I was not so interested in the Bitcoin story because I found that the scalability might be difficult over time, but the underlying blockchain really blew my mind. But I also at that time saw that it's really tricky. If you give people access to like 100 times leverage, which a hedge fund manager has, they might hurt themselves. So on that journey, I kind of thought it's not just about access, it's about education. And how do we actually give access to high quality, non-biased education that you can take better decisions and take more responsibility for your life. And that's why we also have a free blockchain academy, which other blockchains and many universities are taking for free. They're white labeling, they're rebranding it, and we don't mind because we think education will lead to a place where people take better decisions and where we choose different leaders and where we start think global and not local, but we keep the focus on the local community and how we contribute to it.
Right. We were talking over at the Cardano booth earlier, and you've got a tree there, and you were telling me about how you created a project to plant trees in a place in Africa and verify them. Why was that verify the fact that they existed there? Why did you think that project sort of exemplified what you're trying to talk to European countries about right now? And how are the two linked?
It's because it does three things. It allows you to track individual. So basically, there's 1 million trees planted in Kenya. Every single tree is tracked by Internet of Things, different sensors, but also by humans. And that allows us to do, bespoke carbon credits on every single tree. But it also shows that there is no double spending. Today, carbon credits, you can use them in multiple different balance sheets, and you're basically, deducting the same tree. So that's number one, regulatory compliance, but also this double spending problem. The other was that the area was completely dead from economic opportunities. Everybody moved to the city and there was nothing. But a forest of 1 million trees needs maintenance. So this allowed some of the people to move back from the big city and start contributing in the local area. And then they start asking, why is it called the Cardano forest? You know, what is this blockchain actually? They're walking around with an Android phone, taking pictures and uploading it to the blockchain. And now we give them free education. And then we are hoping that they will run a stake pool, or they will start building an app, or they will start doing something where they can stay where they are, take care of their parents, and still, you know, get economic opportunities in the area. So we thought this was a good way of showing that emerging technology can be used without weaponization.
Well, it's certainly quite a good physical demonstration of the technology. But I'm afraid we're out of time. So Frederick Grigard from Cardano Foundation, thank you very much for coming to GITEX Europe. And from me, Mike Butcher, I shall see you tomorrow.
Thank you, and find our living tree down there and go and ask about it.
Thank you.